Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build will be an update to our iced ranged minion build that we did last patch. Now with this one, a lot of it is similar, but the Dreadshade tree did change, so we're going to kind of mix things up a little bit, and since Dreadshade changed, we are stacking a little bit more necrotic damage to our spells, which is going to help their damage a little bit, so it'll be a little less cold and a little bit more elemental plus necrotic, but their damage is still really good. Dreadshade working a little differently means we're only going to have one of them active, but it will no longer drain their life, which means you have way more survivability with them. You don't have to resummon them nearly as much, and depending on your gear, you might not have to resummon them at all if you really build into it at end game. Now with this, we're still going to have the zombies generating us ward, and as for your health, you will have Rip Blood there to replenish both your health and to give you mana. We won't have it generating ward because we want it to replenish our health, as we don't have much health regen or leech since we're not doing a whole lot of damage. The only other thing about this build is that we are running it as a high life build and not a low life build. Wanted to change that because we did a melee build yesterday that was low life. You can still use almost that exact same gear for this build. We do have one unique, the Reach of the Grave, which is very common. But in this one, I want to go high life in case you don't have those uniques, you can still play. Again, it'll work either way. Alright, let's get into the skills, the interactions, and just how it all works. For skills, I'm running Rip Blood, Summon Skeleton, Dreadshade, Summon Skeleton Mage, and Summon Volatile Zombies, my favorite minion skill in the game for how beautiful and how lovely they explode. For Rip Blood, we have this set up to get mana back, to gain health when we hit our minions, and to buff our minions a little bit. We have 1 point in Necromancer, 4 points in Quenching, 1 point in Hematology, 3 points in Mana Feast for the mana back, 1 point in Marrow Drinker so that we get 100 extra % health back, but we target our minions now, 4 points in Splatter, 2 points in Crimson Flood, 1 point in Blood Infusion, 3 points in Infused Frenzy. These will give our minions, when we hit them with a Blood Splatter, 30% more damage and 30% more attack speed. For Summon Skeleton, we have this set up so that we are only summoning the archers, and they're going to shoot out projectiles every few seconds, which is going to help with really good AoE. We got 4 points in Sweeping Strikes to increase their damage. No, we're not after the melee area of effect. It's the damage that's multiplicative that we want for this build. 2 points in Unbound Necromancy, 1 point in Grave Walker so we can have an additional one. 4 points in Necrotic Conviction so that our archers will have 60% more damage. 1 point in Hollow Walkers, 3 points in Unholy Rage for the attack speed for them. 1 point in Marrow Walkers for another additional skeleton, 1 point in Lone Guardian, so they have more crit chance, and then 1 point in Mightier Than the Sword to just remove the warriors altogether. 1 point in Fire Arrow, so they will now shoot out arrows, and 1 point in Ice Arrow, so that it will be an Ice Arrow that has a chance to freeze instead of fire. For Dreadshade, we have this set up to give our minions damage, necrotic damage, increased necrotic damage, not drain their life, and to give them increased attack speed. So we got 4 points in Spectral Presence for the increased area, because we can only have one active, so we want it to be as big as possible. With the Lone Watcher, we can only have the one Dreadshade, but it will no longer drain their life, which means you'll have increased survivability with your minions. Dying Coven gives them 24% increased attack and cast speed. 2 points in Dusk Heart gives them a chance to apply Damned on hit. 2 points in Grim Fate for increased area and to give them increased damage. 1 point in Symbiotic Apparition so that it buffs the allies and us, so that they all benefit it, even though we only have the one shade active on a minion. And 4 points in Lingering Doom to give them that increased flat necrotic damage. They'll have more flat necrotic damage with their spells and their attacks. For Summon Skeleton Mage, we have this set up to just go Ice Mages. So we got 5 points in Gravetide for that adaptive spell damage, 1 point in Cryomancers to put Cryomancers into the pool that you can pull from the different mages, and then 1 point in Frost Lich makes it to where you will only get the Cryomancers and they have increased damage. 5 points in Cellar Mortis gives increased base crit chance for them. Move speed, 3 points in Grey Merchant basically gives them infinite survivability. Gives them more critical strike multiplier, and now they gain 15% of their health every time they do an attack because we have 100% crit. 1 point in Order of Death will make it so we can have one additional mage, and 4 points in Splinter Dominion gives them extra projectiles with their attacks, so they'll now shoot out 3 ice balls instead of just 1. For Summon Volatile Zombie, we're using this to gain ward. We're also doing some damage with it, which is pretty nice. We have 5 points in Forceful Commander, 3 points in Grave Attunement, 1 point in Giant Zombie, so we summon a big one, 3 points in Path of Destruction, 2 points in Necromantic Fervor, so that we get healing from the max amount of health that zombies have. Now this used to be 3%, but now you can only get 2%. On top of that, we're going to put 1 point in Vital Ward, so that's going to give us ward and not health. But we still get quite a bit in this current setup. I get about 600 ward every time a zombie goes kaboom. For passives, we have 21 points in the base Acolyte class with 8 points in Blood Aura, 5 points in Dark Rituals, and 8 points in Forbidden Knowledge. No points in the Lich, and 92 points in our Mastered Necromancer, with 6 points in Risen Army, 3 points in Cursed Blood, 1 point in Blood Armor, 5 points in Mortal Tether, 5 points in Aegis Fall, 1 point in Unbound Necromancy, 8 points in Unearthed Arms. This will give the minion some bow physical attack. 8 points in Tyrant gives us a ton of health. 5 points in Tyrant's Legion gives our summoned skeletons physical penetration, so their bow attacks will do even more. 5 points in Effigies, 10 points in Moonlight Prior to give them fire damage and necrotic damage. 5 points in Frantic Summons makes them attack faster. 5 points in River Bones gives them a ton of critical strike chance and more leech. 4 points in 𝐒𝐭𝐤𝐧, 10 points in Blades of Forewarned gives them more critical strike multiplier and more minion cold damage. And then 10 points in Rite of Undeath gives them more necrotic damage as well as some resistances and elemental damage increase. This will really boost damage. And the final point is in Disciples of Necromancy, so that we can have that 5th mage active. For idols, items, uniques, blessings, we are wearing the same idols that we had on the melee build that we just put out yesterday. You still want the critical strike chance for skeletons and skeleton mages, that is base critical strike chance. And then to get as much health as possible, I'm running hybrid health idols. This is why it's allowing us to stack to such a high amount of health. These give us flat health and increased, and synergize really well with any flat and increase that you have on your gear. And since we're not going low life, this allows us to get flat health and increased health on our chest and on our boots, which is really going to boost that amount of health that you had from the melee version where we were going low life. The only unique on the build is the Reach of the Grave. You can craft something with minion damage or minion spell damage on it. In this case, we're just using this because this increases their spells and bow attacks, which is everything that we're doing. It also lets them leech a big portion of the damage they do, which really increases their survivability. And then it also gives them attack speed, bow attack speed, and cast speed, which is perfect for what our build is doing here. So the Reach of Grave is a perfect item, and you can get it starting at level 5, which is really early. If you already have one, you know what I'm talking about. Really early to put it on, and can help you all the way through the campaign if you have one. For the rest of the items, I'm just going to go over them. Our 10th skeleton is coming from right here, where we have +1 skeleton and increased skeleton damage as an affix. You only need tier 1, just one affix to get that. And then as I hover over these, again, as always, in the description below and in the written guide, there will be a link for this build planner so that you can mess around with it, see it, hover over it at your own leisure. For the blessings, nothing's make or break for the blessings, so get whatever you want. You'll obviously find that some things are probably better for you, but depending on your gear and how different it is from mine, you may not need critical strike avoidance here, you may not need endurance from here, or maybe you do and I didn't take it. So it's kind of like a personal one fit, make it fit your personal build. But I'm just going to hover what I got here. Again, build planner will be in the description and the written guide, so you can check it out. I've got the critical strike avoidance and some increased armor. Obviously not all best in slot. I'd really like to get some endurance, might farm some later. Alright, for the character sheet, you can see we have almost 3,500 health. Most of that is coming from the 24% increased that we have inside of the passive tree. It's also coming from a lot of increase that we have on 1x2 idols. And then also we have increased on the chest and boots now, as well as hybrid on the boots, which is a big boost compared to the build that we did yesterday. You can see that we're almost capped on all of our resistances. We got about 13% armor. We're not building too much into that. And then for damage types, it's all going to be for the minion. We got about 700% minion health, and they have about 500% average damage on what we want. For defense, we are capped on critical strike avoidance, but not capped on endurance. That's something we're still working for on this build. And then for how to play this build and skill rotation, so we're going to summon the minions, hopefully just once and not have to do it again, as they do cost a little bit of mana, but we're going to have 5 mages, and in this particular build we will have 10 archers, and as we run out of mana you can use Rip Blood to get some back. And now we have 15 total minions, and you can see that we got our cold cryomancers and we have our bowmen. And with these, when we go to attack, you will see that we have 100% crit. The white numbers that you do see in there are them applying damned or applying some sort of ailment for dots, which we do have a couple that they're applying, but they have 100% crit. We have calculated out. When you throw a dread shade on, you kind of want to aim for the one in the middle or keep them very close together. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my dread shade on, and you'll notice they instantly get a bunch more attack speed and their damage has doubled. They are now doing 10k crits, which is not quite what we were doing the last patch with the 20 to 30k, but you know, Dreadshade got a bit of a nerf there, so it's unfortunate. But we can also hit them with a Rip Blood, and when we do that and we get a blood splatter, they are now getting even more attack speed and their damage is going up even a little bit more. You can see we're doing about 10 to 15k damage on a lot of those crits, but that's about where we sit. And then the other thing that you'll do with this build, since you don't have to resummon the minions, just once every 20 to 30 seconds throw Dreadshade on, summon your good old zombies as you can, these big bad boys, and they'll automatically go and attack nearest targets. This doesn't count as an enemy, that's why he's not automatically going, but we'll summon those as we can. You'll notice that when they explode, we get about 500 ward per one that goes off. And then as you need mana, you just sit here and hit Rip Blood either on the enemies or on your minions. They'll be targeting your minions and hitting your minions, so try and hit them with the good old blood splatter on the ground, and that's going to, you know, buff them, give you the mana, and allow you to spam more of the zombies. And that's really it. That's the entire build. You'll go around. It does play a little bit slower. If you've played minion builds, you know this in last Epoch. It's a little bit slower, but overall, it's really fun. It's very damaging, still has high survivability, and again, you can play it either as high life or as low life. I personally like low life so that you have the ward generation and don't have to worry about trying to use a potion. You don't have to worry about trying to get, you know, leech or hits in on the enemy to get leech. Right now, as we have it, we're just trying to spam zombies whenever we need them for the ward. We kind of keep them as a backup. The low life version I like more because it just kind of does all that for you and it's out of mind and you don't even have to think about it. But that is it for this build guide. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, stay safe, travelers, and enjoy some gameplay.